It's Alicia, and welcome back to the Eat Me podcast. Guys, it has been a while. I actually took a break because I just needed some time to kind of like regroup and, get myself together. But I'm glad to be back with you all. I am really excited about this actual podcast episode because it's just you and I. So it's going to be really cool, really fun. And like I said, I'm excited to get back into the swing of things. It's funny, like being away for a while and then realizing, like, I really missed you guys. I really missed being, you know, behind the mic and talking to not only you all, but, guests and all that kind of stuff. So we are back in full effect. Happy December. I cannot believe we have made it to December 2024. I'm blessed in that regard, but y'all, it has been a lot, right? But I wanted to come on today, just you and I, just talk about the holidays as it relates to eating and our behaviors with eating during the holidays. And this like came to me actually last night. I was asleep and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a really good thing to talk about because I was wondering like how do I come back and like really approach this in a way that's relevant to what's going on. Um, and so I thought, wow, let's really go there and see how this actually lands with people. Because I know for me, growing up, eating, particularly during the holidays, was like the thing. Like you knew you were coming to grandma's house or maybe our house, growing up to, have all the family there and eat and eat and eat and eat, right? And not really thinking about the after effects of eating, not even thinking about why I'm consuming so much food at this time. Is it something that's emotional? Is it something, who knows? Like, right? Is it just like a tradition, right? Is it just, we just come to eat, ad nauseum because that's just what we've always done as a family or a friends group or whatever, however you gather. But it was really interesting. I found an article and I'll actually link it into the show notes, but it's an article by the National Library of Medicine. And the title of this article is Winter Holidays and Their Impact on Eating Behavior, a Systemic Review. And I really enjoyed going through this article because a lot of the points that I wanted to talk about were mentioned in this article. They basically, so a systemic review generally is I'm assuming what you would probably be thinking. So they have reviewed other sources and other articles as it relates to something similar with this actual subject matter. And so they've pulled together different articles and, put this together on top of, conducted additional research with other participants. Um, and it was really, insightful to one, read this article and then think about my own experience as it relates to, previous holidays, even, this past yesterday. Let's be serious. I mean, I'm recording this the day after Thanksgiving, but just thinking about my intake yesterday and me being in the mindset of like understanding that I can only eat so much because if this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. But for those who have been following this podcast for a while, I had the gastric sleeve. And so consumption is very limited when it comes to having surgeries like this. And so as I was eating yesterday, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to stop, right? Like my body is like, girl, we have had it. Like, let it go. And really thinking about that and also just being conscious of, okay, I'm going to eat some more. So it's just like taking that time to not be judgmental, because in the past I would have been very judgmental on myself to some degree and like, oh my gosh, even though I want to eat this, I'm fat ass or whatever I would say, demeaning to myself. And it's so amazing to see that growth within me to know that I'm not, making myself feel bad or having that negative conversation in my head, but just really being mindful. Like, this is something that I'm going to do. This is something I need to stop doing. And either way, there's no judgment, if that makes sense, So it's really interesting in that regard, just to see the growth within myself. For those, like I said, if this is your first time listening, I have struggled with eating my whole life. Even after having the gastric sleeve, I realized that, yes, I have a limited space in my stomach to, eat food, but it was my brain and just me understanding that it goes beyond just me having this limitation with my stomach being basically, majority of it being cut off. I have some other work that I need to do emotionally and mentally, because it just wasn't the fact that I couldn't control my eating. I had some other trauma based things that needed to be worked through and that I'm still working through. It's not like, oh, magic, I figured it out. Like I went through a whole emotional eating coaching program, which was life changing because it also incorporated what was called somatic meditation. And the somatic meditation was something where it worked through trauma based issues within my body that I didn't realize was still stored there, and not realizing certain triggers would, cause me to go straight to eat something. And now being mindful of that, like I said, it's not completely like magic gone, but just being mindful has been so, like I said, it's been life changing because before I didn't even know, excuse me, I didn't even know I was being triggered. I didn't even know, listen, I didn't even have a language around what was triggering. Like, let's be serious. Before, something would happen. I don't know why it would cause me to just go into a frenzy, and I would go to the nearest bakery or wherever and just go in. And then it also, as it relates to this particular topic, going to different holiday events, whether it be with friends, family, that anxiety around being in those spaces for me would cause me to eat more. There was anxiety, just around being around certain people. Also, it's like being around certain people and also being excited to be there. So it's like all these different emotions bound up in, this whole experience. And so because I am an emotional eater, or I'm like, getting better at, you know, repressing that side of me at the time, and like I said, it's still a work in progress, I would go in because I'm anxious, I'm excited, I'm, you know, possibly disappointed. Like all the feels were happening all at once, and me trying to manage them all at once without any tools. There's my food. Let's chow down. So that was kind of like how I approached the holidays in the past, and now I've really, like this past holiday in 2022, no 2023. Oh my gosh, I'm like, forgetting what year it is. Time and space for me. I don't know about y'all, but it is like sometimes I forget like what's going on, or if when the last time I talked to somebody, it's just all over the place. Anyway, I'll say last year um was kind of like one of the first years where I took it upon myself to just be Christmas, that is, be just with my immediate family, which is my daughter and my wife. And it felt good because it allowed me to really figure out what I wanted, right? Not just, oh, I have to do this or we have to get together with these people because that's the way things have always been. And if you don't do that, then you're seen as this bad person, right? So that was something that I decided to do for myself and also for our family. And it was amazing. Like, it was such a beautiful experience, very low key. And even yesterday, it was just us again, and it was nice. I mean, my daughter took it upon herself. She went and hung out with her girlfriend and, met with other people. But for me, I think I'm in a transitional phase. And I don't know if this resonates with anyone else, but I'm in this phase of where just trying to understand, how I make new memories, how I create new traditions as it relates to holidays, as it relates to eating, and things of that nature. And so this actual episode is right on time for me because beyond me trying to figure out what I am doing moving forward, it's also helping me with understanding how eating should be approached moving forward. So let's just get into it. So, like, first of all, let's acknowledge my nice little onesie. I don't know, you can't, if you're not watching on YouTube, you can't see. I'm wearing this comfy onesie. I have just been chilling. I did comb my hair, I took a shower, did all the things today. But I was like, I just want to relax because I'm in a space now where it's just like I just need to be comfortable. I need to obviously look presentable. My wife was like, "Girl, get it together," and I was like, "I'm gonna comb my hair. I'm gonna do all the things." But yeah, I just wanted to be relaxed. And I'm hoping that you all are relaxed too and that we're just going to enjoy ourselves here. But yeah, so like I said, the title of this particular article was Winter Holidays and Their Impact on Eating Behavior, a Systemic Review. And a few things that like stood out to me. One, and I didn't even realize this, it says obesity poses a significant challenge to public health. I mean, obviously that, but with its prevalence rapidly rising globally, it is currently the fifth leading cause of death worldwide. And I thought that was really interesting because I feel like sometimes we don't acknowledge that obesity is a disease. And for someone who has been, obese for the majority of their lives, talking about myself, I never looked at it that way. It was just, I don't have the skills that I see these thinner people. Like I don't see, what they have going on. I don't have that. And so because of that fear of, or not fear, but just that shame and that guilt around that, I just continue to eat because it's like, okay, well, what the hell? Like, what am I gonna do? Um, I don't have those skills, so I just will just this is just me, fat leash, like whatever. And so I'm just going to just continue doing what I'm doing because their fate is different than mine. And clearly their fate was meant for them to be a thinner person, healthy, quote unquote, healthier person. So here I am, fat. Literally, that's what I thought. And not realizing that this is a disease and that there's a lot of contributing factors to it. It's not a lack of willpower. It's not laziness. It's not, all these things that a lot of people want to pin on it. Just so it's an easy target for people who are obese to make fun of them, to, put them down, including myself. So just that really stuck out to me. And I really feel like there has to be different approaches on how we deal with obesity. Because I feel like a lot of it, even in the healthcare field, it is pointed in a way, or not pointed is probably not the right word, but like it, it's put out there in a way of like, oh, look at these gross, quote unquote, gross people. They need to figure out how to lose weight. They need, it's like all this like other type of mentality as opposed to creating some type of inclusive approach. And listen, I don't have all the answers, but there has to be a way of including some other way of like addressing the emotional and mental health side of it too. Because, okay, that's great that you can put together a health plan for me. Tell me my caloric intake should be this, and this, incorporate more fruits and vegetables. But at the end of the day, there's probably something else that's going on. And so I think that whole idea around mental health and the approaches of that is definitely something that needs to be looked at. Trauma interventions as well, because I know a lot of my obesity concerns dealt with growing up in a very traumatic situation and having trauma based instances that happened in my life that I never addressed until my 40s. And now I'm unlearning and relearning things that are beneficial to my life. So I just wanted to point that out. Another thing that it said, it went on to talk about like the idea of, just the festivities of it all, in terms of the holiday time, right? And how that actually requires us to have, well, let me backtrack because I'm going a little ahead. So as it relates to obesity, let's go back to that. The obesity component of this in terms of gaining more weight during the holiday season, because that was another thing too I was interested in was what does that look like? Like the weight gain during the holiday season, and does that actually involve a person maintaining that actual weight or does it increase? In the study, let me look, I put it down because I, I actually copy and pasted a few things from the actual article. Let me see. Can I see here, guys? When I find it, I'll go back to it. But basically, it was saying that those who are, struggling with obesity, that additional weight gain that happens during the holiday season, it not only stays there, it then contributes to additional weight gain until that springtime where, society and media presence starts, front loading us with things like, well, you got to lose weight by the summer. And then every diet organization on the planet starts pumping all their propaganda. and, commercialize things, lose weight and do this, Atkins, Weight Watchers, or whoever's still out there. Cause I just don't even consume any of that anymore. It does, we're flooded with that. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to get it together. And so I thought that was really interesting too, because it's like, wow, like I never thought of it in that way. Like it's like a cycle, right? It's a cycle of, okay, you gain all this weight during the winter holidays. And then it's like back to, oh, now I've got a diet, right? Or you get to the mode where you start dieting. Even New Year's, like New Year's is another time where they really try to perpetuate this whole idea of we've got to have a fresh start. You got to start losing weight, blah, blah, blah. But meanwhile, it's still winter. And, we're still like kind of cozy. And some people are good about the resolutions but most people aren't. And so because of that, that then causes people to feel defeated. And you continue to eat more, you don't continue that, exercise regime that you said you were going to start for the new year. And it just becomes that domino effect of falling, into a cycle of just overeating. I know this doesn't for everyone, but for people who are this resonates for, because this was me. I'm basically talking to myself. Let's be serious. That was my actual cycle where I would, get to a point like, oh, I can do it. I've got it. Da 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 da. And it's like one little thing that would throw me off, or a holiday would hit me and be like, well, I mean, can't can't like not eat. I don't want to be that person. And actually, I'm jumping around. But as I say that, that was one of the things that they mentioned in this article. And it was the idea around, not wanting to be the other, right, at a holiday event. And so you indulge and you eat because of the people that are around you, that social environment. Like it is meant to cause you to want to eat more, the different things that are happening in the environment, whether it be good things like the music that's playing, the beautiful table that's set out, the maybe, if you're in a setting where there are people that you're enjoying and whatever, so you're eating, and some people who are consuming alcohol. So all those things, they play a huge part in that. And if you're not in that mindset of being mindful of how much you're consuming, you fall victim, right, to being someone who is consuming way more than what you normally consume. And I thought this was interesting. This is where the next actual talking point was, and this was something I took from the article. It says, furthermore, festive periods often align with public holidays in many countries. So before I continue with this actual study was conducted in several countries beyond the United States, which I thought was interesting too. So, like I said, it was public holidays in many countries, providing an ample opportunity for sedentary behavior, so just lying around, not really being active, and overeating. On Christmas days, for instance, individuals may consume up to 6,000 calories, which is 3 times the recommended daily caloric intake. And I'm thinking about my previous holiday experiences with family and friends and thinking about not just Christmas, because this particular article just focuses on like Christmas up until New Year's. For those who are in the United States, of course, a lot of us celebrate Thanksgiving. And so we're eating, like, and that is like the eating holiday. You know what I'm saying? Like you're chowing down, at least in my experience. And so I think, honestly, this is just my opinion. I think even the 6,000 calorie intake I think it's to some degree, I think it can be a bit, what's the word? Gosh, what is the word? Why am I blanking? But basically, I think it's more than 6,000 calories. Let's just put that there. But for some people, just knowing how rich some of these foods are and all of the work that goes in it. Because for those of y'all who follow me on social media as well, you know that I cook, so I know what it requires to in terms of ingredients to make certain foods, particularly during holidays. Like those foods, like you're putting in a lot of butter and sugar and things, and You might be frying stuff. And so that caloric intake, to me, I feel like it could be more than 6,000 calories. So imagine Thanksgiving Day, the day after Thanksgiving. Some people can stretch it a little bit further beyond that, right? And so you're consuming all of that within those few days. Give yourself a break. Take what's it, 2 or 3 weeks, and then you're back at it again during the Christmas time. But another thing this article mentioned I thought was really interesting is it mentions like how to monitor and manage yourself and within that time frame because holidays are here. So we have holiday parties, with work events, friends will invite you over for holiday parties. And so it kind of like beyond just those few days with Thanksgiving and the Christmas, you have kind of throughout those months, and then you're up to New Year's, where you are consuming roughly 6,000 calories or more within a 2 month span. I wouldn't say daily, but at least 3 or 4 days out of the week, depending on your social situation. Like some people are very social, like this might be their thing, like up until January. And so knowing that and knowing, particularly for people who are obese, and might not have the tools to kind of like navigate getting back into like a routine where you are being mindful of what you're eating, physical activity, things of that nature, it continues to build upon the weight that you already have. And so that just causes more that sense of just guilt and shame. You can't fit into clothes, and trust me, I was there. I was that person. Thing is like basically at the end of this article, it just basically talks about like how to maintain those things, like how to be mindful of how you are eating throughout the holiday season. And it gives some different tips on how to do that. But for me, like I said, I feel like a lot of the emotional eating is one of the bigger points, at least for me. And what I love, because that's how I was reading through the article, I was like, yo, are they not going to even mention emotional eating? Because I feel like for a lot of us, i.e., myself once again, that was like one of the biggest things for me as it relates to dealing with eating during the holiday season. And so in this section, when I found it, I was like, yes, okay, let's get into it. So, emotional eating, they said researchers defined emotional eating as a state that is often encountered during the winter holidays as tendency to overeat in response to negative emotions such as anxiety or irritability. Highly palatable foods are those with low nutritional value but high in fat, sugar, and salt. Empirical evidence indicates by suppressing the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis response, highly palatable foods protect against stress. Yo, when I read that, I was like, yes, 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 and yes. We know with foods that have low nutritional value, our bodies aren't, we there's no sense of like feeling satisfied. And so you can just keep eating and eating and eating and eating because your body's not like, oh, that we've eaten something that is giving us all that we quote unquote need. So we're good. So, having something that's, nutritionally dense, your body's like, thank you, we're done. We don't need any more. But when you're eating things that don't have it, your body's like, okay, I guess eventually we'll get it. I guess. As your body can be in that state of like, I guess eventually we'll get to a point where we can eat, feel, satisfied. And then here we are, eating well over than what we're supposed to, and we feel, kind of like gross and whatever. I think also too with that, knowing what we have just learned about what emotional eating is, the tendency to overeat in response to negative emotions such as anxiety or irritability, at least for me, because I have experienced emotional eating, excuse me, for the majority of my life. It's almost as if you're in a trance state, at least for me. I mean, everyone might have something different, but I'm just eating and eating and eating because it's helping me cope with whatever is going on around me, particularly if it's something negative or anxiety provoking. In order for me to quote unquote feel safe, I need to be eating, or that's how I used to feel, in the past. And it also goes on to say research also revealed that loneliness is associated with the preferences for palatable or over healthy food. And I thought that was interesting too. I just moved that. Sorry. I thought that was interesting too because I thought, okay, knowing, and I think I mentioned this before, knowing that people are, wanting to fit in, right, as it relates to this whole situation, you're going to indulge in this food, and so you're going to pick the things that you see everyone else really eating. Because I'm thinking about family members in the past that would bring things that were healthy to a holiday meal, and that was like the butt of every conversation. It was like the joke, like, oh, so and so brought that. What were they thinking, right? And so you don't want to be the person that's like left out. So you're going to laugh and joke and obviously leave that particular dish to the side and be like, yep, nobody ate it because you already knew what time it was. Nobody came here for that, so you don't want to feel like you're not a part of the group. So I thought that was really interesting too. It's like, wow, like we really, in some cases, have, ourselves in this idea that healthy food is not an option during the holiday season. And so as it relates, as we continue on with this whole idea around emotional eating and the stress of it, the article goes on to say there are three important coping strategies with stress. And I thought this was interesting too. So, as it relates to this, avoidance, emotion oriented, and task oriented coping strategies are part of coping with stress. So, engaging in a substitute task, also known as avoidant distraction or via social diversion, represents avoiding coping strategies. Elevating negative emotions associated with stressor represents emotion oriented coping, and addressing and dealing with a stressor are the task oriented coping strategies. Music was reported as commonly used strategy for coping of people who engage in emotional eating, which has important implications for advising people who engage in emotional eating to listen to music for discharge. Such strategies may also be used during Christmas. I thought that was a really cool way of like helping people deal with emotional eating. Like maybe something like music will help you. Sometimes even going for a walk, kind of like getting out of that environment and kind of getting yourself together, whatever that could promote something that's positive in the process, I think that would be super helpful for someone who does struggle with emotional eating, particularly during a holiday situation. Another thing, which I was like, yo, this is crazy town. This part of this emotional eating section, it says sometimes, I was like, wow, sometimes parents feed their children in order to relieve their child's emotional distress, which is also called emotional feeding, which may be considered as a part of emotional eating. This may cause reoccurring emotional eating. The child has been taught to use food as a coping mechanism. Another important coping mechanism with emotional eating is mindfulness. This is an awareness that emerges through debilitating paying attention to present moment without judgment. So I want to stop there because I want to go back to the emotional feeding as opposed to as it relates to emotional eating. So I kind of got ahead of myself. But I thought that part was really, really important because I feel like growing up, my emotional eating experiences beyond the traumatic stuff was also something that was brought about because I was emotionally fed. And there was no fault. Like, I'm not saying, oh, my parents were terrible or blah, 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 or, the adults in my family were terrible for this. I always bring it back to the fact that, my mother and her elders grew up in poverty. My father's side as well, but my father died when I was 10. So I didn't really have a lot of interaction, like holiday wise, with my father's side of the family. So a lot of my interactions and experiences in the past were with my mom's side of the family, and they did emotionally feed us a lot. And, a lot of times it was like, oh my gosh, it was so good. Like, the food was good. It was great. Like, hands down, my family, when they say they can cook, they can throw down. But at the cost of obesity, at the cost of, you know, us not having like mindfulness, which I'll go into here shortly, mindful ways of approaching eating. Because in my family, if you had food, you were rich, like you had money. not that you have money, but the idea of having food was like, oh my gosh, you are well off. You can take care of your family and friends, blah, 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 because you have food. Because growing up, these people didn't have food. And so when they would put food before you, it was expected that you ate that food, and it was expected that you would eat whatever's on your plate. And so as a child, you didn't make your plate. More times than not, they made your plate. And so whatever was on that plate, you were supposed to eat it. And that led to, at least for me always feeling guilty for having food left over and wanting to finish whatever was left. And also seeing my mother, not even just holidays, seeing her finish our plates, right? Like she would, if we didn't finish food and she had already like, I guess like bothered us to no end about finishing it, and she was tired of doing that, then she would just go ahead and eat it. And so growing up seeing that, it was just kind of like a thing of like, oh, I think I'm supposed to do that too, right? Like I finish people's food. Not that they were my child, because I didn't have a child until my late 20s, but all that to say, that was just something that I saw and I thought was normal, right? I thought it was normal to, finish the plate. I thought it was normal to like not get rid of food. And so if there was food that was left over, I would just eat it. That was just a part of my daily practice in life. And so I just thought it was so interesting that after this particular section, talking about the emotional eating as it relates to children, they started talking about the mindfulness of eating. And like I said, mindful eating, it said this is the awareness of, well, let me start again. It says this is an awareness that emerges through deliberately paying attention to the present moment without judgment. Mindful eating practices may decrease emotional eating behaviors through interventions on parent mindful eating and parent mindfulness. Being aware of the power of mindfulness, such strategy for coping could be taught and used during Christmas and any holiday, right? Because I feel like, particularly in America, because I mean, it's the only place I've ever grown up or lived, rather. I feel like that is something that we have never practiced was being mindful during a holiday and the eating during that time, at least within, my family and the different family and friend situations I've been in. I've never been in a situation where it was like, okay, maybe I should stop eating. It was like it was praised that you continue to eat, or whatever. It was like, oh, yo, you're going in, whatever. So I think that's so important because it then allows you to just keep that practice in your daily life. And as I'm thinking about it, I can't remember exactly who it was. I do remember a family member or maybe a friend who did. It seems, I don't know if they had language around it, but they did practice something similar to this, like where it was like they ate what they ate and they were done. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, later on with my grandmother, she would practice that for herself. Like she would just have small portions on her plate of everything. She tried everything and she ate it and she was good. But it was weird at the same time, because when it came to us, eating, there was never, well, maybe you should do this. And then maybe it was a thing where she was like, okay, I'm modeling this, so hopefully you would pick it up eventually. I don't know, but it was just never talked about. As I think about that, I was like, oh, that's interesting because I do remember her doing that. But she got to that point because of health concerns. Like once she got sick, she had a lot of cardiac issues, so like heart issues and stuff like that. So she changed her diet. She became vegetarian, all that. But it was never a thing of like, oh, now everyone else has to do it. It was just her personal choice. But I just think that's interesting now thinking about that. It's like, oh, she did practice something similar to that, but it was for her and everyone else kind of like had their own free for all. Like, it just was what it was. But I think it's interesting because even with emotional eating, for me, and moving forward with how I approach holidays and how I approach what I'm eating during those holidays, it is it's been a life-changing thing. Like this year, we did not make a lot of food. We made like the things that we normally like to have, having like tons of desserts. We didn't do that. We had one main dessert and we still have a lot of it still in there, which was shocking. Did not have a lot of, we had just enough for three people. In the past, I would have had so much food, probably enough food for about 10, 20 people. I'm not even joking. Like I am being so, because that's just the way I grew up. And then I felt like because of that, we had to finish it. We had to eat it, you know? And so it's just so important for me to see this evolution in my world. And hopefully this will be an evolution for you, or a start of an evolution for you and your family and friends, to start being a bit more mindful about how you approach holiday eating, and not let it be this free for all. It's kind of like, forget about all the things that you might have started to acquire as it relates to a routine with maybe exercise, and monitoring what you eat during the day, and not just falling completely apart, um, and not feeling bad about it too. That, I think, that's another important thing we have to keep in mind too. It's like not um, putting ourselves down because we have made these choices. It's just being, monitoring them, like, okay, I did that. All right, let me adjust this, because, moving forward, I want to do this, 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 and this. And so I think as we continue to approach the holiday season, and even with, not approach, as we're in the holiday season, when am I saying a thumbs up? I guess if you're looking at this on YouTube, I just got a thumbs up from the actual platform. That's so funny. But anyway, as we're in the holiday season, it's just being as mindful as possible when we're eating, um, and increase that physical activity. Like I said, maybe after you've eaten all those things, because you don't want to just completely like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to eat. Like, enjoy yourself, enjoy your friends and family, but maybe incorporate something like, hey guys, let's all go for a walk, or let's play a game that requires us to move our bodies. Something that would, change up the typical way that we manage ourselves during the holiday season. I think it's so important for that, and not calling people out, like, not, well, you eating too much, or like, nothing like that, but just trying to incorporate healthy habits, positive healthy habits, so we can then, keep that going as we move forward each and every day. Because I think the more that we create healthier habits, one, people will see that and want to model that, hopefully. And then two, it's also something good for you at the end of the day, really taking the time to take care of yourself, and know that you are worth being taken care of mentally, emotionally, physically, and all the things. And so, like I said, I'm going to share this actual article in the show notes. I'm really excited for um, me getting back into podcasting, and sharing with you all moving forward. It has been really good, actually, to be away and just kind of figure out where I'm moving forward, or how I'm moving forward with the Eat Me podcast. And I'm just excited because, for those who have listened, where I've shared some information, previously, like, I want to not just talk about things as it relates to like food and eating and things of that relation, that nature. I mean, but also talk about things that are quote unquote eating at me, things I'm curious about, things I want to learn about, things I want to teach you all about that I've learned. And I feel like we as a society can evolve and become better moving forward. So, really excited for what's to come. Really excited that I'm back behind the mic. And, as I always say, let's just keep on keeping on. Let's keep learning. Let's keep growing, because that's what it's all about, y'all. We want it to become our best selves. So I will see y'all Thursday for Car Confessions. Excited for that. Yeah, welcoming myself back to the Eat and welcoming you all back to listening. Whether it's your first time, or if you've been like waiting, like, where is Alicia? I'm back. I have not gone anywhere. I just had to take a break, but I'm back and excited. All right, y'all. I hope your Thanksgiving holiday weekend will be great, will be wonderful. And I hope this will be something that will allow you to move forward in how you approach the holiday season. All right. I love you all. And I will see you on Thursday during Card Confessions. All right. Bye.